New Year's Eve. For most people, it's one of the happiest nights of the year. The streets come alive with laughter and music. Fireworks explode above glowing cities. Friends gather, families toast, and strangers unite in that final countdown to midnight. It feels magical, like the whole world is holding its breath for a new beginning. It's a night of joy, a night of celebration, a night where resolutions are made, and the promise of something better feels just within reach. But here's the thing most people forget. Midnight doesn't just mark a new year. It also marks the darkest hour of the night. And when the clock strikes 12, something else arrives with it. Vulnerability, chaos, and shadows that stretch further than you think. Because while you're cheering, kissing, and clinking glasses, someone else might be plotting, lurking, waiting. Think about it. At a house party, can you really say you know every single face in the room? On a crowded street, can you tell which footsteps belong to a friend, and which ones are following too closely? And when you slide into the back seat of a car after midnight, are you sure it's really the driver you ordered? On New Year's Eve, distractions are everywhere. People are drunk, tired, overwhelmed by noise and excitement. Fireworks mask screams. Music drowns out footsteps. Crowds hide predators in plain sight. And the emptiness of a late-night street makes you realize just how alone you really are. That's why this night is so dangerous. Feels safe. Feels full of light and joy. But under the glitter and champagne, the truth is far darker. Some people see New Year's not as a fresh start, but as an opportunity. A night when no one's guard is up. A night when the perfect crime can slip right between laughter and celebration, unnoticed until it's too late. And that's what tonight's stories are about. Real people. Real nights that should have ended in happiness, but instead turned into something terrifying. A house party that welcomed the wrong guest. A young woman who got into the wrong car. And a man who discovered that sometimes, the most terrifying thing about New Year's Eve isn't being alone. It's realizing you're not. So before you count down with me, remember this. When the fireworks fade, when the music stops, and when the crowds finally go home, New Year's Eve doesn't always end in celebration. Tonight, I'll share 3 true New Year's Eve horror stories that remind us midnight isn't always something to celebrate. New Year's Eve is about noise, music, laughter, fireworks echoing down the streets. It's about being surrounded by people, a blur of faces, a blur of excitement. And when you're in the middle of it all, it feels safe. After all, nothing bad can happen in a house full of friends, right? But that's the trick. Safety in numbers is just an illusion. This story takes place in a quiet college town, the kind where every New Year's Eve, students throw wild parties that spill out into the streets. One house, in particular, became the go-to spot that year. A group of 6 roommates had decided to host the ultimate New Year's Eve party. Word spread fast. Friends told friends, people brought along their roommates, and before long the house was packed. The music was blasting. Lights were dim but pulsing with color. The kitchen counters were covered in red cups and empty bottles. Every room buzzed with voices. By 10 p.m. the house felt alive. And in that kind of chaos, nobody noticed one more person slipping inside. At first, he blended in perfectly. He grabbed a drink, nodded along to the music, even danced with a couple strangers. To anyone glancing his way, he was just another guest. College parties are full of unfamiliar faces, so no one questioned it. But as the night wore on, some people began to wonder, who is that guy? He didn't seem to know anyone well. He floated from room to room, never sticking with the same group for long. And while most people laughed and shouted over the music, he was quieter, watching, observing. Around 11:15, one of the hosts noticed him heading upstairs. Now that was strange. The second floor was off-limits. The hosts had made it clear, keep the party downstairs. But curiosity got the better of her. She followed. Upstairs, the music was muffled. The hall was dimly lit, the chaos below replaced by eerie quiet. She saw the stranger at the end of the hall, standing half-hidden in the doorway of a bedroom. He was going through the coats piled on the bed, digging into pockets, rifling through wallets. The host froze. Her first thought was, he's stealing. But when she called out, "Hey, what are you doing?" he didn't run. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he slowly turned, looked right at her, and smiled. "I'm just waiting for midnight," he said. The words sent a chill through her. She didn't know what he meant, but the way he said it, calm, almost playful, made her skin crawl. She called for her friends. Within seconds, a couple of other guests rushed upstairs. They demanded he leave. But again, he didn't run. He just stood there, smiling that same unsettling smile. Eventually, they shoved him toward the stairs, and he disappeared into the crowd below. The hosts tried to shake it off, telling themselves he must have been drunk, some random creep who'd wandered in. But as the countdown neared, they couldn't shake the unease. 10, 9, 8. The crowd roared. Everyone shouted together, raising their drinks. 7, 6. And then the lights flickered, just for a moment, long enough for the crowd to groan and laugh it off. 5, 4, 3. But the hosts noticed something else. Some of the guests were frantically patting their pockets, looking under tables, shouting over the music. 2, 1. Midnight hit. Cheers filled the room. But under the cheers, more and more voices were rising. "Where's my phone? Has anyone seen my keys? My wallet's gone." Panic spread fast. Guests turned out their pockets, dug through coats, searched the floor. Dozens of people were missing their belongings. And in the chaos, one thing became clear. The stranger was gone. Police were called. Statements were taken. But the damage was done. Nearly everyone had lost something. Phones, wallets, purses, car keys. And the worst part? Nobody saw him leave. Weeks later, the hosts learned the full story. That man hadn't just been some random thief. Police told them he'd been breaking into houses across town for months, always slipping in unnoticed during big events. He would take what he wanted and disappear before anyone realized. But this time, he hadn't stayed in the shadows. He hadn't crept through a window or broken a lock. He'd walked straight into a house full of people and stayed. Hours spent blending in, smiling, waiting. And when someone finally noticed him, he looked them dead in the eye and said he was waiting for midnight. Because midnight wasn't about a celebration. It was his signal. The moment when noise and chaos reached their peak. The moment no one would notice what he was doing. That night left the students shaken. For months after, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. They realized something terrifying. Even in a house full of friends, surrounded by music and laughter, they hadn't been safe. Because sometimes, the scariest person in the room isn't the one outside trying to get in. It's the one who's already there, standing right beside you. New Year's Eve downtown is chaos. Streets overflowing with people. Music blasting from bars. Fireworks lighting up the skyline. Everyone moving at once, half drunk, half lost in the countdown. And in that chaos, all anyone wants at the end of the night is to just get home. This story follows a young woman named Claire. She was 24 at the time, celebrating the new year with her friends at a packed club in the city. They danced, they drank, they laughed, and by the time the clock struck midnight, the streets outside were a blur of flashing lights and voices. But around 12:30 a.m., Claire decided to call it a night. Her friends wanted to keep going, but she was tired, and she knew if she didn't leave soon, finding a ride would be impossible. So she stepped outside, wrapped her coat tight against the cold, and pulled out her phone. She opened her rideshare app, ordered a car, and stood under a streetlight waiting. The app said her driver would be there in 5 minutes. White Toyota, license plate ending in 62. Sure enough, a few minutes later, a white Toyota pulled up to the curb. Same make, same color. Without a second thought, Claire opened the back door and slid inside. First, everything felt normal. The driver didn't say much, just glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She tried to make small talk, but he didn't respond. He only nodded once, hands gripping the wheel tightly. That's when she noticed the music. It wasn't the kind of upbeat pop songs most drivers played. It was strange. A low, distorted hum, almost like static. the kind of sound that makes your skin crawl without knowing why. She tried to ignore it, pulling out her phone. But that's when her stomach dropped. Her rideshare app still said, "Waiting for driver." Her car hadn't been marked as arrived. She wasn't in the right car. Claire froze. She glanced at the driver. He hadn't asked her name. He hadn't confirmed the destination. He just started driving. Her voice trembled when she said, "Excuse me? Are you here for Claire?" No answer. She asked again, louder this time. "Are you my driver?" The man's hands tightened on the wheel. His eyes never left the road. Then, with a quick click, she heard it, the doors locking. Her heart pounded. The streets outside were growing emptier, darker. As the car turned away from the busy downtown lights and into quieter neighborhoods, she tried to open the door. Locked. She shouted, panicked now, telling him to stop. He didn't. He just kept driving, face blank, eyes fixed ahead. That's when Claire realized. If she didn't do something, she wasn't going home. Thinking fast, she pulled out her phone and pressed it to her ear. She pretended to answer a call, her voice louder than normal, trembling but determined. "Hey, yeah, I'm almost home. Yeah, I just got into the car. White Toyota, license ending in 62. I'm on 5th Street now. Should be home in about 5 minutes." She said it loudly, clearly, making sure every word carried. For the first time, the driver's eyes flicked toward her in the rearview mirror. His jaw tightened. She kept going. "Yeah, my roommate's waiting at the door. She said she can see me on the app." That wasn't true. None of it was true. But she needed him to believe it. The driver's breathing changed. He was rattled. His hands loosened on the wheel just slightly. And then, as they approached a red light, Claire made her move. The car slowed. The second it stopped, she yanked the door handle and shoved her shoulder into it with everything she had. The lock clicked up. Maybe he hadn't pressed it hard enough. And before he could grab her, she threw herself out of the car. The pavement was cold and rough as she hit the ground, rolling onto her hands and knees. Horns blared. Other cars screeched as she scrambled to her feet and bolted toward a group of pedestrians on the corner. Behind her, the Toyota sat for a moment, engine rumbling. She could feel his eyes on her, even without turning back. And then, the car pulled away. It vanished into the night. Claire was shaking, barely able to explain what had happened. A couple nearby helped her call the police. She gave them everything, the make, the model, the rough digits of the license plate she remembered. But when they ran it, nothing came up. The car and the man were never found. Weeks later, Claire followed up with the police. They told her something chilling. Hers wasn't the only report that night. Several women had come forward, all with similar stories. A man in a white car, pulling up near bars and clubs, letting women climb in, then locking the doors and driving off. It was a pattern. A predator using the chaos of New Year's Eve as cover. Claire was lucky. She trusted her instincts. She fought to get out. But she still thinks about it every single December 31st. Because the truth is, the thing she thought would keep her safe, the rideshare app, the promise of a ride home, almost became the very thing that put her in danger. On New Year's Eve, desperation to get home safe can sometimes put you in even more danger. New Year's Eve isn't always about parties. For some people, it's just another night at work. Bartenders, security guards, office employees trying to meet a deadline before the year ends. While the world celebrates, some people are still staring at computer screens or sweeping floors. And when the clock strikes midnight, they're the ones walking home through streets that should be alive, but instead are eerily empty. This story belongs to a man named Daniel. He was 32 at the time, working as a graphic designer for a small firm in the city. That year, his boss demanded a project be finished before the new year. So while his friends were out clinking glasses, Daniel was still in the office, hunched over his computer. By the time he shut everything down and packed up, it was past 12:15. Fireworks were still echoing faintly in the distance, but the streets near his building were quiet. Almost too quiet. Daniel buttoned his coat, pulled his scarf tighter, and began the familiar walk home. Normally, it only took him about 20 minutes. But from the moment he stepped outside, something felt off. The city was a ghost town. Streamers and confetti littered the sidewalks, but the people who had thrown them were long gone. Streetlights hummed overhead, casting long shadows across the pavement. The sound of fireworks was faint now, muffled, coming from neighborhoods blocks away. Out here, the only sound was Daniel's footsteps. First, he tried to shake it off. It was late. It was cold. He was tired. But as he crossed an intersection, he noticed something. A man. On the other side of the street, the stranger was pacing slowly, back and forth under a flickering street lamp, hands buried in his pockets, head slightly bowed. At first, Daniel thought nothing of it. Maybe he was just waiting for someone. But as Daniel walked, the stranger turned and began walking too. They weren't side by side. Daniel was about half a block ahead, but every time he glanced across the street, the man was there, keeping pace. Daniel quickened his steps. His breath fogged in the air. His shoes tapped faster against the concrete. And sure enough, the stranger sped up too. Daniel's heart thumped louder. He tried to be rational. Maybe the guy just happened to be heading in the same direction. It was a city, after all. Coincidences happen. But then came the moment that erased all doubt. Daniel stopped, pretended to check his phone. Across the street, the stranger stopped too. He didn't pull out a phone. He didn't look around. He just stood there, watching. Daniel swallowed hard, the hairs on his neck rising. He turned a corner, walking faster now. When he glanced over his shoulder, the man was there. Still across the street, still matching every move. The emptiness made it worse. If it had been crowded, if there had been cars or pedestrians, Daniel might have felt safer. But here, on this deserted stretch of road, there was no one to call out to, no one to help. Paranoia set in quickly. Every sound seemed louder. The scrape of his boots, the faint crackle of distant fireworks. Every shadow looked sharper, darker. Finally, Daniel made a split-second decision. Instead of heading straight home, he darted into a narrow alleyway, hoping to lose the man. His footsteps echoed off the walls as he jogged deeper, heart racing. But the relief was short-lived. The alley wasn't a shortcut. It was a dead end. Cold brick walls loomed ahead. Trash cans lined the sides. There was nowhere to go. Daniel spun around just in time to see the stranger step into the mouth of the alley. This time, he wasn't across the street. He was right there, blocking the only exit. The man walked slowly, each step deliberate. His face was shadowed beneath the streetlight, but Daniel could make out a twisted half-smile. "You shouldn't be out here alone," the man muttered. The words weren't shouted. They weren't threatening, but they dripped with something Daniel couldn't explain. Something that felt worse than anger. It was intention. Daniel's back pressed against the cold wall. He glanced around, desperately searching for anything. An open door, a fire escape, something. But there was nothing. The man kept coming closer. And then, just as the air between them seemed to close, a sound ripped through the night. Boom! A firework exploded overhead, so loud it shook the alley. Brilliant colors lit up the sky beyond the rooftops, spilling light across the bricks. And with that noise, voices followed. People cheering from balconies, spilling out of bars a block away, celebrating again. The brief silence of the street was broken by a sudden wave of sound and life. Daniel's eyes snapped back to the stranger. He was gone. The alley entrance was empty. No footsteps, no retreating shadow, just the echo of fireworks. Daniel stayed frozen for nearly a minute, chest heaving, before he dared to move. When he finally made it back to the main street, there was no sign of the man. No clue he'd ever been there at all. He never found out who the stranger was or what he wanted. The police later told him it could have been a mugger, or maybe someone unstable, or maybe something worse. But Daniel never got answers. What he did get was a lesson. Every New Year's Eve since then, he's made sure never to walk home alone. Never to trust the empty silence of a street after midnight. Because sometimes, it's not the chase that terrifies you. It's the unknown. New Year's Eve is supposed to be a celebration. A night where time itself feels suspended, where we forget the grind of yesterday, the mistakes of last year, and convince ourselves that tomorrow will be brighter. There's glitter, champagne, fireworks, and countdowns. But these three stories show us a darker truth. Think back to the man in the apartment, the one who woke up to find an intruder hiding in plain sight. While the city outside was bursting with sound, his own home, the place that should have been his safe haven, became the stage for something far more terrifying. Or the young woman waiting for her ride, thinking the driver who pulled up was just another part of the night's convenience. She was surrounded by crowds, neon lights, and music echoing through the streets. But in all that chaos, no one noticed the wrong car. No one saw how easily a predator could blend in, simply by pretending to belong. And then there was Daniel, walking home on those empty streets, the fireworks fading into the distance, surrounded not by a crowd, but by silence. When every shadow became suspect, and every step behind him was a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't what you see, but what you don't understand. 3 stories, 3 different people, but one common thread: New Year's Eve. The truth is, this holiday creates the perfect cover. Think about it. While we're distracted, singing, drinking, kissing at midnight, someone else might be watching. While the street's empty, predators suddenly have free reign over neighborhoods that hours earlier were filled with people. When we're celebrating, our guard is down. And when alcohol blurs judgment, when noise drowns out cries for help, when confetti and laughter make everything feel safe, it's easy to forget how fragile safety really is. That's what connects them all. The intruder who hid in plain sight, using the noise outside to mask his presence. The fake driver, waiting for a victim to step into his car. The stalker who chose the quietest hour, when the city finally slept. New Year's Eve gave them opportunity. And here's the unsettling truth most of us don't want to admit. Predators know that. They know when we're at our weakest. They know the moments when crowds and distractions give them cover. And they know that midnight, for all its symbolism of fresh starts, is also the perfect time to strike. We think of New Year's Eve as a beginning, a chance to wash away the old year and step into the new with hope. But for some people, it's not about hope at all. It's about hunting, about waiting for that exact moment when everyone else is too busy counting down to notice what's lurking in the shadows. So when the countdown begins, and you raise your glass to the new year, take a second to look around. At the strangers blending into the crowd, at the dark windows across the street, at the empty corners where someone might be waiting. Because while you're counting down the seconds to a celebration, someone else might be counting down too. Not to celebrate, but to strike.